General Hospital spoilers tease that as the leaves begin to turn and October casts its golden shadows across Port Charles, a quiet storm brews, one not of nature, but of hearts breaking, trust unraveling, and a mother's desperate fight to reclaim her place in her child's life. Willow Corinthos stands at the edge of the courtroom steps, her breath uneven, her fists clenched at her sides. The marble beneath her feet feels colder than the wind around her. This place, this building, holds the power to return Wiley to her arms or to take him from her forever. Inside the courthouse, the air is tense with anticipation. The case of Willow Corinthos versus Michael Corinthos for the custodial review of Wiley Courtamain Corinthos is scheduled to be heard in 3 weeks, and the pre-trial motions are already sparking headlines in every tabloid from New York to Los Angeles. Yet the real battle isn't in the news. It's buried in secrets. Ones that stretch across years, past trauma, and tangled relationships with people who once stood by her side and now look at her as a stranger. Willow had waited too long, everyone said. After the leukemia diagnosis, she had become consumed by survival, willing to surrender anything, including the everyday rituals of motherhood, for one more shot at life. She made choices she couldn't undo, compromises that had seemed logical when every breath felt borrowed. Now that she was in remission, now that her strength had returned, she wanted back what mattered most. But time had shifted everything. Wiley had grown. Michael had grown harder. And in her absence, other faces had crept into the periphery of her past, Sasha Gilmore and Daisy Kwan each carrying their own shadows into the fight ahead. Michael watched from the Corinthos estate, arms folded, eyes flicking between surveillance footage and deposition papers. He had once loved Willow, deeply, tenderly, and part of him still did. But something about her now unsettled him. She was distant. Calculated. Secretive. She claimed to be better, claimed to be healed, but then why was she meeting with Sasha again? Why was she visiting Daisy of all people, without telling him? He had gone to great lengths to shield Wiley from danger, especially from people connected to the dawn of day. And now, without warning, those old connections were stirring. Sasha had denied any involvement when Michael confronted her. She just needed someone to talk to, Sasha said with soft, sad eyes. She's scared, Michael. She doesn't feel seen anymore. Not by you. Not by anyone. But the evasiveness in Sasha's voice hadn't escaped him, nor had the fact that Daisy had returned to Port Charles weeks before Willow filed her petition for custody. It didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like strategy. Willow, meanwhile, wrestled with the impossible weight of perception. Every step she took was watched, every choice she made analyzed. Her time away from Wiley had not been voluntary, she had been sick, dying even, but still, there were things that couldn't be undone. Missed birthdays. Missed nightmares. Missed mornings filled with cartoons and juice boxes. She had chosen to live, yes, but in doing so, she had let others live her life for her. Michael had become both father and mother. And now, he didn't seem eager to let go of the role. She visited Diane Miller, hoping the attorney would help her navigate what felt like legal quicksand. Diane was blunt as always. The court favors stability, Willow. Michael has given Wiley a steady home, a predictable routine. If you want joint custody, even supervised, you'll need to convince them that you're not just healthy, but whole. Willow nodded, even as the words settled heavy on her chest. How does one prove wholeness when their heart still carried scars? Her interactions with Sasha had started innocently. They shared a bond few others understood. Both had been manipulated, both had lost themselves in public scandals and private heartbreak. It was Sasha who first reached out after Willow's remission became public, sending a bouquet of lilies and a note that simply read, "I'm still here if you want to talk." They met at the pier days later, and it was like flipping open an old journal, pages torn and smeared with tears, but still legible. Sasha admitted she'd been attending therapy, working through the addiction, the breakdowns, the loss of Liam. "We can't fix the past," she told Willow, "but we can stop hiding from it." Daisy, however, was another story. Willow hadn't planned on seeing her. She didn't even know Daisy was back until she showed up one evening outside the Metro Court, leaning against a lamppost with the same ethereal smile she used to wear at the Dawn of Day compound. You look well, Daisy said, as if no time had passed.
Stronger. Enlightened, even. Willow's instincts screamed to walk away, but curiosity took hold.
Daisy claimed she had changed, that after the collapse of Shiloh's cult, she'd sought real healing. I've been part of a new community, she whispered, her voice soft as always.
No names. No brands. Just peace. Willow didn't believe her. Not really. But a small part of her wanted to.
Part of her still craves meaning in the chaos, a narrative thread to make sense of her losses. Over the following weeks, Willow met with Daisy twice more, never mentioning it to Michael, not because she was hiding anything, but because she didn't know how to explain why she went.
Maybe she needed closure.
Maybe she just wanted to see if redemption was possible. But even as she tried to convince herself, a sliver of doubt began to curl in her stomach. At the Quartermain mansion, the tension was building. Carly had her own opinions, loud, unfiltered, and always strategic.
You don't let someone like Willow back in without a fight, she told Michael. Especially not when she's consorting with people like Daisy. This isn't about love. This is about control.
She's going to use Wiley to fix her own brokenness.
Michael didn't want to believe that, but the fear clung to him like a second skin. The court ordered preliminary evaluations.
A psychologist was assigned to observe both Willow and Michael separately with Wiley.
During Willow's session, Wiley was quiet, hesitant, unsure. He didn't remember her the way she remembered him. He clung to his toy dinosaur and asked when he could go home.
Willow smiled through the ache, played alone, drew pictures with him and pretended not to notice the absence in his eyes. Afterward, she sat in her car for an hour, shaking, trying not to cry. The psychologist's report wasn't damning, but it wasn't glowing either. The child displays healthy attachment with his current guardian. Biological mother demonstrates warmth but must rebuild rapport. Emotional distance noted. It was clinical, but to Willow, it felt like a sentence.
Distance. As if love had an expiration date. Meanwhile, Sasha began unraveling under the pressure of secrets she had promised to keep.
Daisy had contacted her too privately, cryptically, reminding her of a shared moment from years ago that Sasha had buried deep.
It wasn't just about Willow. It was about what Daisy knew, what she had recorded.
One night at the Metro Court bar, Sasha sat alone with a burner phone clutched in her hand.
Inside it was a recording.
A conversation from months prior between Daisy and a voice that could only be hers, Willow's, asking questions no mother should ever ask.
If I leave everything behind, if I disappear again, would they let me start over with Wiley? The recording was out of context. Misleading, perhaps.
But dangerous in the wrong hands.
Sasha didn't know what to do. She knew Willow was vulnerable, searching for balance.
She also knew Michael was inching toward a decision that could shatter Willow's chances permanently.
She'd promised not to get involved. She'd promised to stay out of the crossfire.
But as the final hearing approached, and Daisy's motives remained unclear, Sasha realized she might be the only one who could prevent a tragedy on both sides. The morning of the first courtroom session dawned gray and unforgiving. Willow stood in front of the mirror, dressed in pale blue, her hand shaking as she pinned a locket around her neck. Inside was a photo of Wiley, taken years ago.
Michael arrived in a dark suit, Wiley's hand nestled in his own.
They didn't speak as they passed each other on the courthouse steps, only nodded, a gesture heavy with history and heartbreak. Inside the courtroom, Diane rose to speak first, her voice steady.
This is not a case about unfit parents. This is a case about time lost and love still alive. MS.
Corinthos fought for her life so she could return to her son.
She's here now. Ready. Present.
And every child deserves to know their mother.
The opposing counsel stood with a different tone. Consistency matters. Routine matters. Wiley's life has been structured, safe, and whole. We must ask, is reintroducing a destabilizing force into his life truly in his best interest?
Willow's eyes met Michael's across the room, and for a second, everything else fell away.
This wasn't just about courts or custody or legalities. It was about them. The decisions they made. The wounds they carried. And the boy sitting between it all, holding a coloring book in one hand and the fate of 3 adults in the other. The judge called for a recess. Outside, Sasha stood waiting, with the phone in her hand. Sasha's hands trembled as she stared at the screen, the image of Willow's voice captured in a private moment, a confession made in uncertainty now threatening to burn down everything. She had replayed the recording countless times, trying to decide whether it was an act of weakness or a cry for help. In the sterile corridor outside the courtroom, everything felt too loud. Footsteps echoed like warnings and whispers felt like accusations. She clutched the phone tighter and leaned against the wall, heart pounding, unsure if she was about to save Willow or destroy her. Inside, the court resumed. Willow sat straight-backed, composed, but her gaze drifted repeatedly to the double doors as if waiting for something, anything, that might shift the tide in her favor. Michael's eyes never left her. He was no longer driven by rage or revenge, but by a deeper, more dangerous force, fear. Fear that she wasn't being honest. Fear that she was reaching for something not because she was ready, but because she was desperate. And desperation, in Michael's experience, made people do reckless things. Diane asked the court to permit Willow to address the judge directly. The request was granted, and Willow stood slowly, her knees nearly buckling under the weight of everything unspoken. She didn't look at the audience, nor at Michael. She looked directly at the judge, her voice clear but aching with restraint. She spoke of motherhood not as a right but as a journey. Of waking up after the transplant to an empty room and realizing she had survived only to find her son had moved on without her. She described the hollow silence of recovery, the noise of guilt, the unshakable love that lived in every cell of her body for Wiley. The courtroom sat still. No objection was raised. But in Michael's mind, the speech wasn't enough. Not when she still hadn't come clean about Daisy. Not when he had asked her directly and she had lied with her eyes. He had once admired her strength but now wondered if it had hardened into something else, something impenetrable and dangerous. Sasha walked in then. Late, unannounced. Her eyes locked with Willow's and a silent conversation passed between them, one of alarm and warning. The judge paused at the interruption but allowed the proceedings to continue. Sasha sat in the back row, the phone still clutched in her palm, still undecided. But then she saw Wiley's drawing on the bench beside Willow, a simple crayon sketch of a house with 2 stick figures, both labeled Mom. Sasha closed her eyes. That was the truth. That's what this fight was really about. A child trying to understand why love had to be divided like property. After court adjourned for the day, Willow found Sasha waiting by the stairs. They didn't speak at first. The tension between them was a thread so taut it could snap with a whisper. Finally, Sasha handed over the phone and whispered, "She's trying to ruin you. This is the only copy. You decide what to do with it." Willow listened to the recording again, this time with cold ears. The words were hers, yes. But the context lost. She had said them in grief, in the haze of post-recovery confusion, to someone who she thought understood. But Daisy never forgot a word. And now she was using them. Daisy had reappeared under the guise of healing, of peace. But her true motive began to emerge slowly. She had become aligned with a new fringe group, one with no name, no creed, just control. They were smaller, more discreet, and far more manipulative than Shiloh's followers. And Daisy was at the center. Willow had become a symbol to them, a cautionary tale of someone who escaped modern life only to beg for its return. To Daisy, Willow's return to court, to society, to motherhood was proof of failure. You can't unawaken once you've seen truth, Daisy had told her. And yet Willow had tried. Michael began his own investigation quietly. He hired a private firm to dig into Daisy's recent activities. What they uncovered alarmed even him. Daisy had made several untraceable deposits into offshore accounts. Her recent presence in Port Charles had coincided with the return of other familiar faces from the dawn of days past. Not all of them were reformed. Some were hiding in plain sight. And Willow had been seen with her on multiple occasions. He wasn't sure whether Willow was being manipulated or was participating, but either way, Wiley's safety was at stake. He met with Diane that evening, placing the photographs and documentation in front of her. "If she's associating with people like Daisy, this could destroy her case," he said quietly. Diane hesitated. "It could also destroy her," she replied. "And I don't think that's what you want." He didn't know what he wanted anymore. He had dreamed of a future where he and Willow co-parented with peace, where Wiley thrived with two loving parents who respected one another. But now that felt like a mirage. Too much had happened. Too many lies. Too many shadows. Back at her apartment, Willow stared at the phone in her hand. She could erase the recording and deny everything, claim it never existed. Or she could admit what she had said and risk the court questioning her mental fitness. Or she could turn the focus back where it belonged, on Daisy. With a trembling voice, she called Diane and asked her to file an emergency motion to subpoena Daisy Kwan as a hostile witness. The motion was approved, and 2 days later, Daisy was brought in under oath. She arrived unrepentant, radiant in her calm. She denied manipulation. She denied coercion. She denied having any contact with Wiley. But when Diane played the edited clip from Sasha's phone, Daisy's mask slipped. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, she faltered. "You recorded her without consent," Diane pressed. "You used that recording to intimidate a mother fighting to be with her child." "Why?" Daisy smirked. "Because some people don't deserve second chances." Willow sat frozen. Every word Daisy spoke was a blade. But she let it play out. Let the court see who Daisy really was. When cross-examination began, the opposing counsel tried to argue that Willow's association with such individuals reflected poor judgment. But the judge didn't flinch. He ordered the clip stricken from the record and instructed the jury to disregard it as evidence. That night, Michael came to see Willow in private. He brought Wiley's favorite book, the one about dragons and moonlight adventures. He didn't say much at first, just sat across from her in the dim light of her apartment. Finally, he asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Willow didn't cry. She had no tears left. "Because I didn't want you to look at me the way you are now," she said. "Like I'm a stranger." He looked down. "You're not a stranger. But you're not the same." "I had to become someone else to survive," she said. "But I'm not asking you to believe in who I was. I'm asking you to believe in who I am now." Michael handed her the book. "You read this to him next time. He misses your voice." The final hearing arrived with a strange stillness. The courtroom no longer crackled with tension. The judge, having reviewed all documents, testimonies, and evaluations, delivered the verdict with measured grace. Willow would receive shared custody, initially supervised, then gradually expanding over a 6-month review period. Michael would retain primary residence. The court emphasized that both parents were fit, loving, and committed to Wiley's well-being, but that transition must be handled carefully to avoid emotional disruption. There was no cheering, no outburst. Just a long breath of collective release. Afterward, Willow walked to the park and sat on the swing set alone. The wind curled through the trees, and laughter from nearby children drifted around her. Sasha appeared, hands in pockets, silent at first. Then she said, "You fought the right way." Willow smiled softly. "I didn't win." "Not really." "No," Sasha said, "but you didn't lose either." That's the best kind of ending. From a distance, Michael watched as Wiley ran toward Willow, his little arms outstretched, shouting "Mommy" with a joy that shattered every doubt. And in that moment, Port Charles felt just a little quieter. Just a little more healed. For now.